Good morning, everyone. This week we're focusing on how we can discern the voice of God with confidence, how we can know that we're really hearing from God. And we introduced a discipleship question yesterday in which we asked ourselves, how can I love and serve the people that God has put in my life? And today we're going to look at a second discipleship question. And this is a good one for when we have those inevitable, screw-ups, when we sin, when we fall short of what God calls us to be. I know myself, this has been a challenging year, as I'm sure it has been for everyone. There are a couple predictable things that I know can cause a mini meltdown in my life. One of them are computer problems, because I'm not real great with the computer. When I'm at the office, I'm okay, or if Karen's at home, I can get her to help me or get the staff to help me. But when I'm by myself and I get in a jam with my computer, I start talking to my computer and saying all kinds of, awful things. And when I move, when I'm in a situation where I'm moving from one place to another, whether it's going on vacation or moving to a new house, and all of those have happened in the last year for us. And what I find myself, I can't find something, and so I just start melting down thinking, I can't believe this. And I start hearing these internal voices then as I think about, my immaturity and, my inconsistency. And I start to say, you're just sick, you're flawed, you're really unworthy, you're incomplete, you shouldn't be a pastor. But, then I find myself realizing that I'm listening to the wrong voices. I'm listening to those internal voices, that old human paradigm that kind of, measures yourself on how you're doing, your doings, rather than your being and who you are. And that's when I ask this second question: God, how can you be so good when I'm so unsorted? Now, I love this question because the word unsorted is a little unusual, but our author, Brandon Cook, uses it a lot. And I began thinking of it as when I would look at a pile of socks, unsorted socks on my bed. It's kind of like my life. It's kind of a mess. And yet I don't focus on the mess. I focus on the fact that, God, how can you be so good to me when I am such a mess? Now, I want to read to you something that Brandon says here. He says, rather than fighting against these internal voices, which, like pulling against Chinese handcuffs, only strengthens their grips, we have to learn to say, yes, I'm flawed, I am complete, woo-hoo. We have to learn to rejoice in our weakness even while we're rejecting whatever shame we associate with them. We interpret the voices of shame with awe and wonder and gratitude, which is why we ask the question, Jesus, how can you be this good? How can you be so good to adopt me when I'm so incomplete? How can you desire union with me when I'm screwed up so much? How can you be so generous? How can you be so loving? By asking these questions rather than fighting against our flawed and sinful nature, we learn to get the focus off of ourselves and onto what God has done in love for us through Jesus. Now, this all goes back to the doctrine of adoption. And we hear those words that the Father uttered to Jesus before the temptations, before he went out to start his public ministry. You are my Son, whom I love. And when we remember that we too are God's sons and daughters by adoption. And he says the same thing to us. You are already in. You are already accepted. You are already my son, my daughter. You are already accepted in the beloved. So let me read one more line here from Brandon, which kind of sums it up. He said, indeed, discipleship is primarily about identity and about living from our identity as God's children. This is why it is so different from the human paradigm of trying to earn an identity. We should not be surprised when we read that Jesus' entire ministry of compassion and healing began with the Father through the Holy Spirit saying, this is my beloved Son. This is because Jesus did from a place of being. He didn't try to earn a place of being by doing. This distinction is crucial. As we learn to hear the voice that calls us beloved, we become liberated to live in unprecedented freedom. Well, I hope today, or in the next few days, however long it takes you to mess up, that you'll see it as an opportunity to look beyond those internal voices that are shaming you to the voice that says, you are my son, you are my daughter, whom I love. And you can ask this discipleship question: God, how can you be so good to me when I am so unsorted? Have a good day.